Jag ska glädjeligen presentera Alex Merlo från Podemos. Alex Merlo är medlem i Anticapitalistas i Spanien. Han finns till vardags i Podemos stab vid EU-parlamentet i Bryssel. Den senaste har han varit upptagen med att bygga upp den stora plan B-konferensen i Madrid som ju samlade tusentals deltagare från hela Europa. Så varsågod Alex Merlo.
Thank you very much for this invitation, and I'm very happy to be here and have an audience interested in knowing what's happening around the world, and I'm especially honored to share a meeting with representatives from the Bernie Sanders campaign and from the Turkish HDP. I think that together with Podemos and many other movements around the world, they show that something is starting to change. And this is there are a few recent developments in the last 2-3 years that show that for the first time in some decades there is a strongly expressed political will for change. The youth, the popular classes are making themselves heard, and they are pushing for real change in many different continents, in many different ways, but with some shared values and reasons. So this is very encouraging, and I think it's something that should be discussed and shared among us. For us, it all started 5 years ago, in 2011, in the Spanish state. We were in a very difficult situation. The Social Democrat Party, which was in government, had made a turn to the right and had started to apply all the recipes coming from Brussels, from the European Union, breaking its own electoral engagements and starting to apply social cuts and economic reforms, favoring austerity and attacking the poorest. This had produced some reaction from the union. We had a successful general strike at the end of 2010. But after this general strike, the behavior of the union leaderships, unfortunately, was to negotiate a very bad agreement, which in fact took the movement to an end. And I can remember 5 years ago, we were very worried that given this demise of the traditional left organizations and of the unions, that we would have a reaction from the right, maybe a xenophobic reaction, a reaction that would blame the poorest and the immigrants instead of the people above. And then something happened. The 15 May movement, 15 May 2011, was a profound change for Spanish society, for the Spanish youth, and it's a change that is we are still feeling the consequence of what started there. It was, of course, a movement inspired by the Arab Spring and by the occupation of the squares that had started a few months ago in the other side of the Mediterranean. And after a demonstration calling for real democracy and saying we are not commodities in the hands of bankers and politicians, an occupation of the main square in Madrid started. It was an occupation that very quickly extended throughout the country, and which also produced a contagion in other European countries, such as Greece. As I say, the effects of this movement are still felt today. We realized the very strong will of the people, and especially of the most oppressed people and of the youth, to participate, to say the political parties are not representing us, it is for us to take things in hand. And since then, we have had very precious experiences of self-organization in all kinds of aspects of Spanish society. We have had struggles against evictions, very importantly. The banks are evicting many people of their houses, and the popular movement has been able to physically stop many of these evictions. We have had struggles against the privatization of healthcare, and we managed in Madrid to stop the privatization of the public hospital system. We have struggled to maintain a public education system, and many other struggles that were started by this spirit of participation and of taking things in our own hand. However, this movement also reached its limits, and after 3 years of movement of self-organization, it was clear that the big political parties, although they had lost a lot of support, they still had a majority enough to be able to pass whatever laws they wanted. And it was clear also that their attitude was not one of hearing and of integrating and of changing their policies and making democratic openings to the demands of the people. It was quite the opposite. Voting more repressive laws, more neoliberal reforms, and actually attacking the most oppressed people in society. What we realized is that all the social force that had been created and that we had built in the recent years needed also to address another front, another battlefront, that of the political institutions and of elections. And now we come to the creation of Podemos. Only 1.5 years ago, not 2 years now, 2 years ago we were organizing the first electoral campaign of Podemos. Podemos is also the result of a very deep crisis of the left. The left had failed to achieve its main aims, and especially it had failed to be heard and to be supported by the people that are our natural allies and our natural audience, the popular classes and the most oppressed people in society. Podemos was a project. It didn't come from just a coalition of left groups, although it is also a coalition of left groups, but especially it is a project that through the use of social media and through the use of mass media, of television, of radio and so on, managed for this activist base to address itself to the large majority of society. We know that we have many people self-organizing and struggling, and that these people had a majoritary support from population, but we know that the militant, the activist part is still a minority in society. The defy of the creation of Podemos was to be able to not only address ourselves to the already convinced leftists who are willing to support a leftist program or who identify with a leftist tradition, but to be able to address ourselves to everyone who is suffering. So one of the characteristics of Podemos, which is not necessarily useful in every country, but which is indeed useful to understand, is that we decided to shift the political discourse. It was not anymore about the left against the right. We need to kick the right wing out of the government in order for the left to rule, because we know that most people identify by now social democrats, the ruling social democrats with the left and the right wing with the right, and what we said, and it's as an important truth, is that the powerful classes, the elites, are not scared of the left as such. What they are scared is of the people organizing and taking power in their hands. So we shifted the common opposition between left and right towards a more useful politically opposition, the position of those from below, the majority, the suffering majority, and the people on top, the minority, who are actually ruling the country in their own interest. Podemos also was built on the desire for participation and political participation of the people, and it was in the start a massive popular movement, which in a way started again the process of participation and of assemblies in the squares that had been started a few years ago. Podemos has suffered very strong attacks from the established media, and this was the signal that in fact Podemos was a real danger for the established powers. But we have had important electoral successes. The first campaign, the European elections, we achieved 5 members of the European Parliament. It doesn't give us any real power to change politics in Europe, of course, but it was a signal that there was a possibility for change also in the electoral landscape. In the recent elections, in the general elections, in the 20th December last year, Podemos actually broke the two-party system that had been ruling the country since the 80s. We don't have a two-party system anymore. We now have 4 parties with small differences between them, and a situation where the 2 ruling parties are not able to comfortably form a government. So we are since the 20th December without a new government. We have a functioning government, still belonging to the right wing, but a Congress which has not been able to form a new government. This is already a victory for us. We have managed for the regime to enter into a crisis and for the ruling elites to be unable to form a government. And this means also that since December we have had no new social cuts in Spain. The European Union is asking for more cuts. They say our budget is overly optimistic and that we need to impose new social cuts. This cannot happen, and if the institutional crisis continues like this, it might be many months without new attacks. In the meanwhile, we have time to resist and to organize. However, of course, this is not the victory we are aiming at, and an important thing that has happened since the appearance of Podemos was the victory of Syriza in Greece. I mean, the first electoral victory when the Syriza government was formed. This was an important mirror for us. It showed, on the one side, that it was possible to form a government on the basis of such a popular movement, a leftist organization. At the same time, the result of the first Tsipras government and the financial coup d'etat that was done against the Greek people and the defeat of the Tsipras government, or the capitulation of the Tsipras government, also draws many important lessons for us. First of all, that a government of the people, a popular government, a government that wants to impose progressive policies, which wants to break with austerity and with neoliberalism, will have to confront the European institutions. That we witnessed very clearly in the summer of last year. To confront is not only to confront dialectically. This we have already tried to convince the European institutions that a democratic mandate, that the people are asking for another kind of policies, that austerity is not working. All this they don't care. What I mean to confront is to actually disobey the rules of the European Union. If we want to renegotiate the debt, it is not enough to ask to renegotiate the debt. We need to stop the payment of the debt. Only when you say we will not pay the debt, you can sit down with the creditors and negotiate to see if that debt will be cut. If not, we will continue like this. Also, you need to take control of the banks. The big banks in the southern countries have been saved with public money. However, they are still under the control of private hands. And this was another means of blackmail against the Greek people, with all the capital leaving the country and leaving the government in a situation where they were not able to confront effectively the European institutions. There are many other means through which a government can confront the neoliberal institutions, and we have to read very carefully into what happened and see how a more effective strategy can be held. However, what we also saw is that a single people in Europe isolated from the rest of Europe, will not be able to impose itself. And the Greek government was clearly isolated during this months of government. We didn't have the international solidarity movement that was needed to support the Greek people. This was a weakness of the movement and of the organized forces around Europe, and also a weakness of the Greek government, which didn't explicitly call and try to organize this movement. We need to put pressure and to confront the European elites from everywhere. And this kind of contagion of revolt throughout Europe is what they are most afraid of. So we need a European movement, and we need it also because now the European Union is in a very deep crisis, a crisis that in the one side has shown the true reality of what the European institutions are. For the peoples of the South, the European Union was presented as a way for prosperity and for economic growth and so on. Now that things have become more complicated, we have seen that what has happened, in fact, is the accumulation of wealth by the big banks in the north and an accumulation of debt in the south. And the way in which this crisis has been resolved is by imposing more austerity in the south, imposing social cuts, and at the same time spending huge amounts of money in saving the banks. And this has been the work of the European institutions, and it shows quite another phase of the European Union project. But also, of course, because of the crisis of the refugees. And this, I think, what we have in Europe is not a humanitarian crisis. There's a humanitarian crisis for sure in Lebanon, in Syria, in the places where there are millions of refugees looking for refuge. What we have in Europe is a political crisis, a crisis of the response to the income of refugees. We have seen also the true nature of the Schengen space. The Schengen space is a very nice place to be when you are inside Schengen and you can move from country to country. It feels like a conquest for people who are born, who have the permit to go through the Schengen space. But it is also a way of excluding and of controlling the borders. And if you are outside the Schengen, it is now much more difficult to enter. However, even this system is in crisis. When you have a humanitarian crisis, as you have in the Middle East, it is impossible to stop the refugee inflow. And if you try to do it, you are actually contributing to their suffering, and you are actually responsible for the death of tens of thousands of people who are just fleeing from war. So what we have seen also, and this is a point of hope throughout Europe, is a popular movement in solidarity with the refugees. We have seen in all cities which have received massive inflows of refugees, we have also seen how the most beautiful examples of solidarity have come from below, from people self-organizing. And indeed, if we are to receive the people who are coming, we need to do it through popular solidarity and popular self-organization. And this is a signal for a new Europe, a solidarity Europe, which is up to the role that it should play. So, as the comrade said, in the last month we organized a European conference in Madrid. It was a continuation of other initiatives that have arisen throughout Europe and which are all saying the same thing. The European institutions are not democratic and we need a European movement. So we invited different actors which are talking about these things and which are organizing these things, and also people who are actually struggling against the new free trade agreements, for solidarity with refugees, for social and labor rights, against the dictatorship of the dead. All these different struggles were represented in the discussions in Madrid to see how can we coordinate and how can these struggles improve their European coordination. And as a conclusion of this conference, we propose in the 28th May to organize a big action day throughout Europe against austerity and for democracy. This will be the occasion of showing that European civil society has another project. We don't share the project of the current European elites, and we need a break with them. And we are going to achieve this because we have the ideas and we have the will, and we will have the power in order to make it. So I hope we will see all each other in our different countries in the 28th of May. Thank you.
Thank you, Alex, very much. And yes, we have already, with the initiative from Alex, we have already something to work on together to organize some kind of mobilization the 28th of May.